Well, good evening, YouTube. Welcome to another exciting adventure of reading the Bible with Skylar Fiction. And of course, these amazing guest co hosts, Dr. Josh from the Digital Hammurabi show. I am super excited to be here this evening. You guys are getting a treat. This is twice in one day, man. I'm really putting in my time and effort. I guess I should make up for the fact I wasn't on here for an entire week. So I'm trying to make it up to you guys a little bit while getting credit at the same time. But it's been a whole week. But we did have earlier today, 𝀭Suss is Lord, Jill, as I like to refer to him, came on my channel to allow my audience to get to debate him, right? Like so often I hear people in my comment section like, you should have asked him this or you should have said this. Well, I gave my audience the opportunity to be able to come on today, make their arguments against 𝀭Suss is Lord. Of course, 𝀭Suss is Lord did terrible. Stock account came in. What was the Zhang, I think was his name. Cool dude. I wish he had some mic issues, so he had to leave a little early. And then I feel like there was one more person. I can't think of who. Oh, MP stopped by from the Black Heathen show, so he was on there earlier today. But before I keep going on, what's going on here? Thursday night, Non Sequitur show. You'll see me with Transgender Reality, Christian. A transgender Christian apologist. I know it's a mouthful. It's hard to believe myself, but that's what's going on. I don't know what we're going to have. I actually just got in contact with a really cool, let me read you, and they're going to be coming on my channel soon. I just got to mark the date. He has this channel, but he says, I am a Christian demonologist and paranormal investigator. Yes. That is happening on my channel very soon. I don't know when, but as soon as I can book this person, I am very interested to hear about paranormal investigation while being, I don't even, it sounds like a drink, like a demonologist, like someone who mixed drinks in a way, right? I don't know. I mean, it's a great term. I'm excited. Anyways, let me stop rambling on. Tonight's beer of choice, UFO pineapple. It's pretty good. I like it. All right. To my co-host, Josh, Dr. Josh. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, where people can find your material, and or your YouTube channel. And we'll get this fun Bible reading in today because I think we got some interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate it, Skylar. My beer of choice tonight is Treasure Fest Oktoberfest Lager from what is this? Heavy Seas. Yeah, Baltimore Brewers.
Oh man,
my wife spoils me, so that's how it is. Now, I'm Josh, Dr. Josh from Digital Hammurabi. I have a PhD in Assyriology from the Johns Hopkins University. I have a master's in theology from Capital Bible Seminary and a bachelor's in religious studies from Liberty University, if you can believe that. But my wife and I, Megan, we run a channel. She's also a PhD, almost done with her PhD at Hopkins. And we run Digital Hammurabi. And we try to make ancient Near Eastern literature and texts and history and culture accessible to normal, everyday people that don't have the time or the insanity required to go get a PhD in this stuff. So, for example, last night we did a live stream where we read the beginning of 𝀭Support, the Mesopotamian, one of the Mesopotamian flood stories, and gave commentary on it, kind of like what we're doing here with Genesis. So, it was a lot of fun, and it's good. I think it's a good channel. We've only been doing it for about 4 months, but almost to 1,000 subscribers.
Shit, that's killer. It took me fucking years, I think, to get 1,000 subscribers.
It's awesome. Honestly, it's because of people like you and Kyle and Steve on the Non Sequitur show, and you guys just making it happen for us. So we really appreciate it. But like and subscribe if you can. That would be fantastic. I think we have good content. So, and I'm really happy to be here. I appreciate you having me back.
Oh, dude, no worries. I'm excited to have you on here. So where did we leave off? I think we left off at Genesis 10. This is the third episode of this. I think we're kind of getting through this a little bit. I think it's going well. We've already had some interesting discussion on Noah's Ark and Cain and Abel and all kinds of fun things. I always got to remember to go back to you and ask you what you think the authors were intending by this. Because what I'll do, what tends to happen is you got to understand, Josh classes the show up, right? He's the one with all the knowledge, that he knows the languages, understands like the meaning, the scripture, and things like that. I'm the guy who just takes Christian's interpretation and repeats it to people. So I like to point out how when Christians take the Bible literally, how silly it actually sounds. But we gotta make sure we go through. So what we're getting to is Genesis 10, the Table of Nations, and what we're gonna get. I guess we're getting a little genealogy here of the kids of Noah, which is Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Before I even go into this chat, what are we looking at, Josh? Before I start reading,
yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing about the first section of Genesis, and really the scholars tend to break it up into the first 11 chapters, which we'll finish up tonight, I'm sure. But it's explaining the creation of the world, and then the sin of the world and God's destruction of it, and bringing everybody back sort of to ground zero through Noah and his family. And so now God has wiped out the world, and as we talked about last time, compared to the Mesopotamian flood story, Enlil was just sort of a dick in the Mesopotamian flood story and killed everybody because they were being too loud. Here, this, I think, counter story to the Mesopotamian flood story is, Yahweh is completely justified in doing so because mankind is just utterly wicked. And so now God sort of starts over. He brings back that watery creation, primordial creation stage. And now he's doing it again, and he's starting through Noah and his family. So now we're going to see the genealogy and how the world gets repopulated, and how, in reality, 6th century or 5th century, Israelites are looking at their world around them and trying to explain with an etiological lineage, an etiological story, where the Assyrians come from, where the Babylonians come from, where all these nations around them come from. So
this is like their way of basically explaining it. Hey, this is why there's so many nations after God flooded everything.
Yep.
You know what I don't remember reading. Maybe we did. I was kind of buzzed by that point with the beers. Do you remember the part? Doesn't God regret drowning the world at some point? Doesn't he kind of feel bad that he did it? Like he's like, I'll never do this again, and the rainbow will be a sign of this.
Yeah, and that's one of the parallels that's sort of a play off of the Mesopotamian story. The Mesopotamian gods are remorseful that they've done this, not only because they've killed their creation, but because they're really, really hungry. Because mankind feeds the gods and cares for the gods, clothes them, and so
hungry bastard gods, man. It's like they can make universes but not make some food for themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting how it works,
isn't it? Like I wonder sometimes. If you guys are wondering earlier why I have less of a beard, also, I'm just looking at the camera, looking at my beautiful self here. I did cut my hair earlier. Yes, no, look, hair got cut. I shaved. I do got to do some razor shaving here, but did improve that. Anyways, that's so off topic. I'm sorry. I'm terrible.
All right. Necessary.
I just don't want anybody to be confused. I don't want you to come on like, I was on here 3 hours ago and Skylar had a bigger fucking beard. And how this beard is gone, I don't want to make sense of it. Maybe there is a God. Maybe my hair just it fell off naturally. All right. Okay, I guess we need to start reading this. All right, so now that we got all the genocide out of the way, it's not even genocide. I guess is that genocide? I thought it's just only when you kill one nation. What you'd call it when you kill everybody.
Right. Human raceicide.
Yeah, I guess it's like killing the whole human race off. Where'd he go, God? All right, the Table of Nations. This is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's sons, who themselves had sons after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog. Guys, I just want you as an audience to know that I am not pronouncing these names correctly. I know that I could barely say my own name, so let's please not hold me too accountable to the fact that I am going to butcher and murder a lot of these names. But if you want to read it for yourself, it's called the Holy Bible. You can check it out. All right. So we're talking about Japheth's son. God damn it. Gomer, Magog, and Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer, Eshekenaz, Raphaeth, and Tumogra. I can't if I can say that name. The sons of Jovahana, Elijah, Torishia, The kitties? Is that the word? The kitties? Is that
Kittim? Yeah.
What
You might say
the
the
fuck am I-
Kittite.
like that's like God's sense of humor right there. I'm gonna name them after kittens. Sorry, I'm sorry. And the Rodenites. The Rodenites. Sounds like some kind of rodent army. From these maritime peoples spread out the territories by their clans, with their nations, each with its own language. Now that's interesting because I'm pretty sure that the Tower of Babel happens next chapter, and everyone speaks the same language in the world, and God makes it different.
Go figure.
Wow. This is why you got to read the Bible. This is why it's atheists out there. You want to argue? I mean, just look at this. I just found, reading this scripture, I was able to wait a minute. It's already talking about people speaking different languages. And then all of a sudden, everyone in the next chapter speaks the same language, the whole world. And then that's when God separated them. Okay, we'll keep going. Just need to point this out for folks. Where am I at? The sons of Ham: Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. Now, are those supposed to be literally the names of those people, or is that like referring to the nations that come from? That's what I would figure, right?
So, like where it says Egypt, it's Mitzrayim, which is, the name for Egypt.
All right. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah. Yeah, Havilah is the one. Isn't that it's the one sometimes people think they're referring to hell when Jesus would talk about it. I believe that's the same word. Sabata, Ramaha, Sabitica, sons of Ram, Sheba, and Dana.
Sounds like you're reading from the Pigeon Bible, man.
It does. It's terrible. Cush was the father of Nimrod. Now that name sounds familiar. Who became a mighty warrior of the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the land. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Okay. That's why it's said. The first centers of kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, Aklina, in Shinar. Okay, that's just I should have you read these, Josh. These are terrible.
No, you got it, man. You got it.
All right. From the land he went to Assyria, where he built Navina, Rehoboth, Kala, and Rezin, which is between Nineth and Kahala, which is in the great city. Egypt was the father of the Ludites, the Anamites, the Leobites, the Naphatites, the Patharicites, Casalutites, from whom the Philistines came, and the Capothorites.
It's going to be a quiz later.
Everybody. Yeah, God, yeah. Please make sure you're memorizing this. I'm not doing this for my health, folks. All right. Okay. Later, the Canaanites. Later, the Canaanites clan scattered, and the borders of Canaan reached from Sidon towards Gerar as far as Gaza, and then towards Sodom and Gomorrah, Adamah, Zionism as far as Lisha. These are the sons of Ham, their clans and languages in their territories and nations. The Semites. Sons were also born to Shem, whose older brother was Japheth. Shem was the ancestor of all the sons of Eber. Elam, Ashur, Pharaxta, Lud, Aram, the sons of Aram, Uz, Gada, Meshech. God damn. A bunch of other names. 2 sons were born to Eber. One was named Peleg because his time when it was divided. His brother was. See, now that's interesting stuff. Like, right? Okay, let's just take that verse. Like, I would love to know, and this may be overreaching to ask you for the context of what this is referring to, but like says one's name was Peleg because his time on earth was divided. His brother was named Joktan. Like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what would it be referring to that his time on earth has been divided?
So, I mean, the verb that has its verbal root, Pelam and Gimel, which is Peleg, means to divide. So Peleg, it would be like saying his name was Jumpy because he jumped a lot. Sorry, that was lame.
Oh no,
I mean, what it means,
breaks down to, yeah.
What it means specifically here, I'm not sure. The thing to note, though, I think about this is that while this is to some probably boring as hell, this is this type of text is not unique in the ancient Near East. In fact, this is, again, a very late representation of a genre of text that appears much, much earlier in Sumerian texts. So anybody that studied Genesis 10 knows, I'm sure, about the Sumerian king list, which is essentially a document that says about the Sumerian city-states. It says the kingship descended from the gods and was at this city, and this king ruled for this many years. This king ruled for this many years. This king ruled for this many years. And then there are these little notes. So it's very repetitious, right? Genesis 5, Genesis 10, they're very repetitious. There are these formulae that they use. So-and-so begat so-and-so and sons and daughters, and then that person died. And I think we mentioned this last time. But these little notes that are thrown in, like, this was the father, blah, 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 and this was the father, blah, 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 and they bore blah, blah, blah. But then this little thing here about Peleg and it being divided, that's a little note. That's the sort of stuff that happens in the Sumerian king list and other chronological texts like that, pseudo-historical texts. So it shows, I think, pretty convincingly that there are these source documents that the editor is using. And he's got this list of, places, or this list of people, like in Genesis 5. But then there's other texts that have notes in them, or historical ideas that come about these people, and they insert them in at various points. So it's that sort of stuff I think is important to note when trying to get to the bottom of a text like this.
No, and that's then that makes sense. I don't even know how to say this. But you're right. I think that really, when you're reading the Bible, you really just kind of really understand what's going on in the culture at the time. You got to understand what's going on in the Middle East, Mesopotamia, and all this, and figure out, these are just some culture trying to figure out what went on, why things are the way they are. This is how a lot of God myths come to fruition, is because people try to explain everything. Like, I couldn't even imagine. Could you imagine at one point, like, having almost no knowledge of the world around you? Like, at some point, if you were born in some little village, you're literally only going to know your village, most likely. You're not going to live within a certain distance of your home. You're going to have no understanding of the world around you, why lightning happens, why there's thunder, how the weather works. I always think craziness living in Florida, man. Like, I couldn't even imagine being like a native tribe here, and then you have no clue a hurricane's about to show up. Like, just a serious level 4 hurricane, level 5, category 5, comes blowing through your shit, and you have no clue what's about to happen. And of course, you don't have infrastructure or anything like that. Like, you basically have like villages that you've created that will basically be blown away. And I think about people in those times trying to understand the world around them, and making up these concepts about God, and trying to figure out what these gods want. I mean, literally, you sent me something the other day about like a guy and his daughter having to sacrifice his daughter. Basically, these burnt offerings. Like, people are sacrificing children, which is kind of mind blowing to me too. It makes me wonder: was the value of human life looked at very differently back then? Right? Maybe it was some kind of coping mechanism. Because you even think, even relatively modern, like you think the 1800s, 1700s, right? Parents would have large families. They would have like 10 kids, and sometimes 3 of them wouldn't make it. Like, and you think about how, like, does that cause people to be detached into some level from their children, just knowing, hey, this most likely 3 of these 10 aren't going to make it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I was in Syria, I excavated at the site of 𝀭and there's a village right on the edge of the tell, right on the edge of the mound. And, you'd see them. And like, I remember we were walking back from the mound one day, back to our little compound, and this moped went flying by us, and there was a 6-year-old driving it.
Oh, wow.
And bungee corded to his back was his 8-month-old brother, like sitting backwards, bungee corded. And it went flying down this, dirt road that had rocks in it and everything. And I said to the guy with me, I said, how do these kids survive? And he looked at me and he said, some of them don't. And I mean, it's this reality that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's modern day, you know, and I think you're
Yeah.
exactly right. Um,
A lot of these are just coping mechanisms and trying to figure out ways to justify what's going on around the world. I mean, you think about like you think anything like there were situations where you broke probably if you broke your foot, you're in some serious trouble. Like in those times, like beyond the pain aspect of something. Like I
mhm.
don't like there's really not gonna be much you can do, I would imagine. But like just to be able to survive, to eat, to hunt, to do any of those things, to be accepted. I mean, you can see, and we'll get to that eventually when we get to Leviticus, where we see that like handicapped people were basically discriminated against. They were like told they couldn't go to men with crushed testicles, which I can't wait to get to that verse. I'm going to make you do some research for me, Josh, on why men with crushed. We're going to save that though. I don't want to cheat my audience until we get to the actual chapter. But there's all kinds of things in the Old Testament where men with crushed testicles couldn't go to church and things like that. Anyways, let's finish this chapter, and then I'm going to get another beer. Now I'm feeling it. I feel better. I had a little bit of a headache before, but now I feel the headache is going away. All right. The region where they lived stretched from Mesha toward Sephar in the eastern hill country. There are the sons of Shem by their clan and languages and the territories and nations. These are the clans of Noah's sons according to their lines of descendants, with their nations from the nations spread out over the earth after the flood. Something to notice in here, and I talked about this a little bit with Josh off air, is no women listed, right? No women at all here. And it's not because there weren't women. This is just the level of respect cultures had for women at that time. They were literally possession. They were property. So if you ever think that these people were really moral, well, see, it's all kind of relative. This is why I believe moral subjective. It just goes back to your time and place in a lot of ways, like how you were raised, what influenced you, right? What influenced your emotion and your opinions, what were you taught? Like if you grow up in a time where women have no value, of course you're not going to think women have value, right? I tell this story. And forgive me, audience, if you've heard this before, but I'm going to tell you it again. Anyways, I had a friend of mine who, right before 9/11, was going to go in the medical field. So he decided to join the Army. It was the Army to, get some college money, go study and serve his country, right? His dad was military, as was mine. So he joined the military. 9/11 happens. Of course, he's right in Afghanistan. They sent him as an helicopter evac medical person. And one of the stories he told me is like, first, I thought it was hilarious. They thought a lot of those people in those tribes in Afghanistan never even seen a helicopter. So they thought it was dragons, like chasing them down. Like they would literally flip their shit and freak out. Which is understandable. If you've never seen this giant metal thing coming in the sky, it would probably terrify me too. But the crazier story was he was talking about one time a bomb went off at some village, and he got off. They got off the helicopter. They approached one of the farmers, villagers, and they're like, "Hey, listen." And the guy's like, "Hey, my wife's injured. My goat's injured." And he's like, "Well, your wife is dying. We need to get her on this helicopter. We need to bring her back and fix her up." And basically the guy in Afghanistan was like, no. I kept grabbing his goat to hand my friend the goat. It was like, you need to take care of this. Because in that culture, the goat had more value than the wife did. And the woman ended up actually dying, sadly, because the guy would not let them take the woman onto the helicopter, and they refused to bring a goat on there. What a principle. But it just shows you that even modern day times, when you're isolated in areas, you don't have much information about the world, and what you're taught is a barbaric religion from long ago, and you have other ignorant people teaching you that religion. This is what's going to happen, and it's some scary shit that goes on. So I need to get a beer. So we need to see it. Anybody have a question for Josh? Josh, any thoughts on this chapter? Why I grab a beer? And I'll be right back.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could probably talk a little bit. You mentioned, yeah, go ahead. Skylar mentioned, I think on that show earlier this afternoon with Jill, Jesus is Lord, which I thought was extraordinarily comical. Megan did not find it as comical. She was frustrated with Mr. Jesus as Lord. But there was, I think it was on the show, there was mention made about Job and how Job lost everything in the beginning of the in the book, and in the end he got everything back, and it was like it was okay. And I think about that sort of thing when we consider the value, we consider the position. The value is a word that maybe we could nuance a little bit, but certainly, relative value. Excuse me. Somebody messaged me today and asked me about my interpretation of Deuteronomy 22 and Exodus 22, where it talks about the rape of a virgin. And does it really mean that the young woman, the virgin that was raped, has to marry her rapist? And while the text doesn't explicitly say that the father will force his virgin daughter to marry the man if he deems it so, that's the unnecessary, unstated implication, because it's the husband's decision over and over again. If you read through the book of Judges, for example, you'll see that a tribe all the men of the tribe were killed off, and so there were no women, and there were no women. So much of the tribe was decimated that there weren't enough women to have to get married to the men, and so they told the members of the tribe, lie wait in the fields of one of the other tribes, and as the women come through, just abduct them and take them as your wives. And when the fathers of these women come up and say, "What have you done?" we'll talk to them and say, "Hey, look, do this for your fellow tribesmen, of the other tribe, your brothers of the other tribe, because they didn't have enough women. Just allow this to be so." I mean, this idea of how women were classified as property in a very real sense. I think they were at least considered far beneath the men in this
statement.
Yeah,
Josh is very careful with his words. I am not so careful. They were property. They were objects. There's nothing in Scripture that leads me to believe that they were cherished at all, that they had any kind of rights whatsoever. I don't think that they had any kind of consideration, any decision making.
and as a matter of fact, and then we can move on. But the Milwaukee Atheist had me on at some point this weekend. Sunday, had me on Sunday because it was for the Sunday school thing, and it's pretty cool show. But one of the things that you see is that they're going through the book of Judges, and the judges are these sort of temporary deliverers that rise up to deliver the people out of their bondage. Well, Deborah is one of the female judges, and it's interesting that that so many females show themselves in the book of Judges. But she says to her comrade, "Look, I want you to go down and do the fighting. If you don't, it will be said in Israel that a woman delivered Israel." And it's just like, I mean, if that doesn't strike a chord, that obviously that would be an extraordinarily odd thing that a woman would be the deliverer.
What I find interesting, I should just do a whole hangout about this sometime, is what the obsession is with virginity in the Bible. And a lot of religions too. It's not just the Bible, obviously. But I'd love to get to the root of what the huge issue is with virginity. And understand it from a Christian perspective, love why they value virginity so much. Let me tell you, was a virgin a long time, folks. Wasn't that great. Was not that great. So, like, of course, I'm not advocating that young fucking teens go out there and just have all the sex. You gotta be responsible. You don't want little ones. Let me tell you, having children is the best form of birth control you could ever have, because once you know what these little hellings are like, it's all downhill. And your loss of sleep and your wallet and oh god, it's just too much. It's too much. I love my children to death, good kids, but I see worse ones. I can only imagine having to raise bad children. Anyways, all right, let's go to the next chapter. Chapter 11, Genesis 11. Now we got the Tower of Babel. So I'm excited about this. Let's start reading this, which I will say, already looking here, I forgot how small this little thing is about Tower of Babel. It's literally like a paragraph or two. But Genesis 11. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. Interesting, because just in the chapter before it said that there were many different languages, but whatever. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They could use brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. They then said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may have a name. So that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Okay. I'm going to read this whole thing, and then we're going to go back, because there's so much I want to break down here. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the people were building. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their languages, so they will not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. This is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the languages of the world, the whole world. There the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Okay. I want to point out some things first, and then we're going to ask you what you think is what the authors are trying to articulate here, right? So here's some things I notice. I find it odd that God's saying that these people will be basically able to do anything if they work together and they speak the same language, right? And then he just pulls a dick move and just basically moves them and said, no, you can't be doing that, humans. I need you guys confused, and I need you guys not working together for some reason, right? It's not saying that they did anything wrong. I don't read anything here about them doing something wrong or not worshiping God, they're basically just trying to live and building a city. This, Tower of Babel, but it's also referring to a city is what I read here, right? And then of course it's talking let us, like talking in that three kind of system where it's Holy Spirit, Jesus, yet there's no, well, I guess there's a need for Jesus now, even though whatever. Anyway, so okay, what do you think? What would we say? What do you think the authors were trying to intend with the story? Is it once again just as simple as, hey, this is why we speak other languages and there's different cultures?
Yeah, I mean, and there's and this isn't the only story that that occurs with this sort of motif of there being a time of unified languages and then a time of disparate languages. I think one of the things to note here is that they're doing things. There are things in the text that clue us in that this is Mesopotamian in origin. I mean, even everything that we've seen thus far, the Garden of Eden and the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and the things that are described, everything's out east, right? But which I think should tell us something.
Yeah.
But
they basically ripped a lot of these myths off of Mesopotamia.
Yeah, I mean, picture yourself. So we were talking about this last night on the live stream, and sorry.
No, it's okay. Are you talking about ripping them? These guys probably ripped them off. Yeah, that's all right.
That's right. So authorship is a very different thing today than what they would have considered authorship back then. So, the idea of having this thing called intertextuality and different texts interacting with one another and affecting one another and affecting the groups of people that are interacting with them, it's all very common. So, if you were, let's put ourselves in the Babylonian captivity, right? We're over in Israel, and this major power over in the east, Babylon, the Babylonians, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, they come over and destroy our temple and take us all captive over into Babylon, right? We're over there. We're monotheistic, at least purportedly. We are now, because we see all these gods in the pantheon of the Babylonians. But anyway, we're over there and we're going, Yahweh, well, what happened? Our God is supposed to be the mighty God. Why are we here? And so they're trying to make sense out of things. And so what they've got to do is they've got to construct this story that explains why it is that these things have happened. And it's just not unprecedented, right? This is what ancient peoples do. So if you look here, mud brick is the thing that you use in Mesopotamia to build. It's, they don't have stone, they don't have timber, at least not in any real supply. So what they do is they take brick molds and they take clay and they make these bricks, they fire them, or they lay them out in the sun to bake, and they build with those, and it lasts about 50 years or so before they have to redo it. So that's what they're doing here. Now, there's some articles that came out, there's some research that's been done that suggests that this story is based on a particular tower, it's called the Etemenanki. It's difficult to know if that's actually what it was based on, but this idea of Mesopotamia is a Mesopotamian temple, right? And a temple is the place where heaven and earth meet. That's where they meet. It's called they call it the bond of heaven and earth. And so it doesn't necessitate this exceptionally high tower that goes however far up to touch the dome of the sky, although I think it was a high tower. But the idea here is this is where what they are trying to do is a very Mesopotamian thing. They're trying to establish a name for themselves, which is exactly what Gilgamesh does, right? By doing some mighty deed, some mighty act, maybe even for the gods by building this temple, which is, again, what Gilgamesh does, to try to gain this eternal life, this immortality, by making a name. And God scatters them, and this explains why it is that these polytheistic, ostensibly people who are building this tower in this polytheistic place over in the east were scattered. So
I was just while you were talking, I was kind of looking up the size of the Babylonian Empire to see how big it was. And it was pretty damn big, man. It took over like most of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, parts of Turkey, northern Egypt, or northeastern Egypt. I could do a whole damn episode on just the Babylonian Empire, like how I've heard a lot of interesting history. I'm a big fan of the podcast Hardcore History with is it Dan Carlin? I think who does it. But it's a fantastic podcast if you guys have ever checked it. And it's basically, he has a whole like 3-4 part series called King of Kings, and he just dives into the ancient Mideast and talks about the Babylonians, all these different cultures, how all the wars and all the things that were going on. And it was like, it's like an 8-hour thing, but it is one of the most impressive, mind-blowing things I've ever listened to, because, sometimes it's hard to remember how advanced in a sense these civilizations are, like, building wise, architecture, things like that.
Well, if you're interested in that, this is exactly what we do on Digital Hammurabi. So right now, actually, I just recorded the daily data before we started here tonight. I recorded the daily data for tomorrow, and it's on the Babylonian history. And
look at that.
Yeah, so this is, if you're interested in it, it's what we do. So
this is why I need to watch your channel more, Josh. This is the problem.
Yeah, you don't have anything going on.
No, I don't got nothing going on like that. This is where I live, right here in this chair. I need to watch more. I need to stop wasting time on like Reddit and it's like that. I get into the stupidest videos. Excuse me. All right. Sometimes I get trapped down the rabbit hole of YouTube videos. All right. So that's the Tower of Babel, everybody. That's what went on. It's how we all speak different languages. From Shem to Abraham. This is the account of Shem's family line. 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old. What? How old was he when he got on the boat? Was he that old when they got on the boat? Shem? I don't remember it saying that, but I guess we'll have to go back. Okay, so 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old, he became the father of Arphaxad. And then after he became the father of Raphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and had other sons and daughters. Okay. All right. Once that guy had lived 35 years, he became the father of Sheliah. And after he became the father of Sheliah, Aphralaxadad lived 403 years and had other sons and daughters. Okay. We're going to go into a whole line here. I'm not going to be able to read all this.
Just one thing to note,
Yeah.
there's always this statement, but often I hear, yeah, people lived crazy amounts of years before the flood, right? And you hear this, for example, in young earth creationism. Well, everybody lived really long before the flood, but because the water that was covering the earth and the ozone or whatever, it all came down for the flood, and that's why all the dinosaurs died or something, and that's why people stopped living so long. Well, here, I mean, these aren't short periods of time, 403 years after, giving birth to people that's not a short period of time. So
yeah, and I always, like I said last time, I just try to envision what someone looks like at 100 years old when they lived 800 years old. I just want that. I just want to see it. All right, so I'm going to skip some of it because I'm not when it's just literally this person begat this person, how many years they lived, 200, 330 years. Okay, so let's get to Abraham's family. Okay, Abraham's family. This is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of Abraham, Nahar, and Haran became the father of Lot. While his father, Terah, was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans in the land of his birth. Abram and Nabor both married. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Issachar. And now Sarai was childless because she was not able to. Is it Sarai? How do you say
Sarai?
Sarai. They refer to her as Sarah sometimes too, don't they? Is
that
just a short version of it?
Yeah, Abram and Sarai were their names before God changed them later.
Ah, okay. We give them the white American names. All right, so let's see here. White American, I shouldn't say that. more European Roman is what I should say. All right. Terah took his son Abraham, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram. And together they set out forth through Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran.
So just to kind of point this out, yeah. So they're in Ur of the Chaldees, which is down in southern Mesopotamia. So if you're, I guess, to the people watching, what direction would it be? If this is Iraq, it's the head of the Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
And then the Tigris and the Euphrates River are right here. And then the Mediterranean's over here. Is that right? Is that the right direction where you're looking at this? This is the Persian Gulf here and the Mediterranean's over here.
Yeah, that would be it. Yeah.
Okay, so they're coming up out of Ur, which is down here, and they come up to Haran, which is up here, and then they stop, and then they continue on like this. So that Fertile Crescent, they're basically following the Fertile Crescent.
Oh, all right.
Just so that's...
No, that's good. No, this is good. This is like, this is important to kind of understand that. Like, and it'd be so interesting to get to see this land back then, like this, because I know it was much more fertile in certain areas, obviously, to actually see how. I wonder if it was probably a very beautiful place. Okay, here we go. This is when I think God starts talking to Abraham. So the call of Abram. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all people on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out for Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possession they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired. And the people they had acquired in Haran? Is this slavery? Is this what? Good old-fashioned slavery, folks. And they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Oh, my people and property, man. Never gets old. All right. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at the Shechem. At the time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there, he went on towards the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord.
Just so everybody knows, that's literally setting up his tent, just in case there was any confusion.
He's literally just setting up his tent and building an altar.
If he's pitching his tent, it's not a euphemism or something. I just don't want anybody to get confused.
Yeah. All right. Then Abraham. Sorry. No, it's all right. Then Abram set out and continued towards the Negev. All right, Abram in Egypt. So now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. Why would you go to live in Egypt if the famine was severe? Let me make sure I read that right. Now, there was a famine in the land, and Abram, I was talking about the land he lived in, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife, Sarai, "I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that when I will be treated well for your sake and for my life, and will be spared because of you." All right. They're still gonna sleep with her, which is hysterical. They're still gonna take her, but he's just getting out of getting killed right here, which is kind of funny. He's like, "Just tell me you're my sister. It's cool. They'll never believe it." All right. All right. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman. And when the Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to the Pharaoh. And I just got to say how funny, like, this is like somehow, okay, so these two people walk into a major city. Somehow, like, some of the Pharaoh's assistants saw this woman. Like, she's so beautiful that they go back and tell the Pharaoh, like, "Hey, do you hear about this stranger that came in today?"
What,
like,
you don't buy this? Is that
like,
what you're saying?
I'm just saying there's some suspect things in this scripture here, as far as I'm reading it. And this is, once again, it cracks me up because this is so obviously just like literature. It's a story, like, to tell something. And I don't know why Christians take this shit literally. Just give up the fucking ghost. It's obviously not literally. This isn't literally something that happened. These two people didn't walk into a city, right? And then some people who work for the Pharaoh are like, "Hey, that woman's real beautiful."
And certainly being able to call it, before you go down there. Hey, you know what I think's going to happen?
Yeah, you're there, and then tell them you're my sister. So it's pretty incredible when you really get down to it. Okay. All right, and when the Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. So, and you'd probably be the right person to ask. Weren't women covered up back then? Was this something that weren't women covered in this time period, or is this not a thing yet within religion, where they're covering up the women and stuff like that?
I'm trying to think in Israel. I know that Judah's, I'm just thinking of stories that would talk about that. So Judah's daughter-in-law was covered up, but it was because she was acting as a prostitute. So I'd have to look into that, but I suspect not. It's not the same, I don't think.
It's interesting. All right. So, and the Pharaoh official saw her, praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken to his palace. He treated Abram well for her sake. And Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord inflicted a serious disease on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. Why don't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister? So that I took her to be my wife. Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go.
If we could just pause just for a second. So a couple of things to note here. The fact that That's sort of a dick move on God's part.
Yeah, it's like guy doesn't know. Pharaoh's just like, hey, I got this hot woman came in, said it was his sister.
And
But then,
how does the Pharaoh end up knowing that the reason that he's getting
yeah,
the shaft here is, I mean, where does that come from in the story? You
and,
know,
and I
how
guess
does he tie it back to this woman? It must be Abram's wife, not sister. I mean,
yeah.
where do you get that? It's just assumed in the story, right? It's because it's literature.
And then God goes as far as to make everybody else in the household sick when they really had nothing to do with it. Like some kid in there is just like, Dad, like, what are you doing? Like, why am I getting sick because you married someone you didn't know you couldn't marry or have? Oh my God. So now he says, take her and go. The Pharaoh gives orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. And what's funny is it sounds like Abram negotiated with the Pharaoh to get this shit for his wife, is what it kind of sounds like, because it says, and then when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken in his place. He treated Abram well for her sake. And Abram acquired sheep, cattle, male and female donkeys, both male and female slaves. Like, I can't imagine a Pharaoh, someone who's leading this, this country, would just like give up this stuff when he could take it freely, right? Like there must be some kind of negotiating going on here to why he would bother to treat Abram fairly at all. Like who is Abram to this fucking Pharaoh at this point? They don't worship the same God, I would imagine. I'm sure this is a different gods they're believing in. This is a good story. I did not remember this from my days. All right, where are we at here? Okay, Genesis 13. Abram and Lot separate. So Abram went up to Egypt to go to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. Abram had become very wealthy in livestock, in silver and gold. Of course, he traded his wife off for it. From the most beautiful woman. From the Negev, he went from place to place until he came to Bethel. To this place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier, and where he had first built his altar. There Abram called on the name of the Lord. Now Lot was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, but the land could not support them, while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And quarreling arose between Abram's herders and Lot's. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at that time. So Abram said to Lot, let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between you, your herders, and mine, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. Lot looked around and saw the whole plain of the Jordan towards Zoar was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So let's choose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out towards the east. Excuse me. The two men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had parted from him, look around from where you are, to the north and to the south, to the east and to the west. All the land that you see I will give you and your offspring forever.
So if it's one of the things that you see in the narrative, I think that is good to point out, is that even though circumstances could very easily take Abram out of the promised land, right? Famine goes down into Egypt, screws up. God uses that in the narrative to make him even more wealthy, right? He protects him and he brings him back with even more wealth. Then he comes back and they're in Canaan, and Abram says, wherever you want to go, I'll go the other way. So Lot could have said, I'm going to stay right here. And then Abram would have gone down into the valley. But of course that would have, staying in that promised land is extraordinarily important here. So, Lot is the one that goes down. So God is shepherding, I think in a good metaphorical sense, Abram to make sure that he is staying where he wants him to stay and prospering him even in spite of himself. So I mean, again, literary motifs, right?
No, that makes sense. Yeah, and it's such an interesting story here. Okay, where did I leave off?
Verse 16, I think.
Okay, yeah. Okay. All the land you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. So Abram went to live near the great trees of Marami at Hebron, where he pitched his tents. There he built an altar to the Lord. Builds a lot of altars. All right. Here we go. I think we're getting to the Sodom and Gomorrah here. I think this is what's about to go down here. Abram,
Get real.
It's getting real in Sodom and Gomorrah. Abram rescues Lot at the time when Amraphel was king of Shinar, Iraq king of Elasar. Oh my God, what are we doing? How many places are we going to name kings of places here? These kings went to war against Bera, king of Sodom, Visra, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Adabal. I can't even read all this. All right, all these latter kings joined forces in the valley of Sinith, that is the Dead Sea Valley. For 12 years, they had been subject to Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year, they rebelled.
So,
please. What the fuck's going on?
Yeah. So over in Mesopotamia, and of course, this is likely supposed to be taking place in the Middle Bronze Age, so sometime early, mid, second millennium, something like that. And so, and again, this makes this assumption that the people in the first millennium that are writing this thing understand history well enough to be able to talk about this. But let's assume for a second that they can to some degree. Elam is over to the east, past the Zagros Mountains. So if you're thinking about the Persian Gulf here, Mesopotamia here, it's over here. So Iran today. So Elam was a major power, and then you had the other cities. I mean, the other areas there in Mesopotamia, and what the idea here is that there's this coalition that forms over here and comes across the Fertile Crescent down to where Sodom and Gomorrah were, and near the Dead Sea, so south of Israel, and fights. Right, that's the picture that's being painted here.
All right. And in the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings allied with him went out and defeated the Rephaites. Oh my God, how many
people? Those people,
the Emites. Then they turned back and went to in Masah, that is Kadesh, and they conquered the whole territory of the Amalekites, as well as the Amorites, who also lived in Hazan Tamar. The king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, the king of Zebulun, and the king of Bela, this is Zor, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Sidith against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. Do we might be a little more abstract question here. Do we have any references to any of these kings at that time of actually existing, or is it just too old for where there's really not a way?
I mean, you're asking this. That's a $64,000 question, right? Yeah. There's a paper that was written recently. This battle is actually pretty popular. So trying to identify the four kings. Early on, there was a thought that Amraphel was Hammurabi.
Okay.
I don't subscribe to that, but it's not. It's not really all. You have to do a lot of linguistical. You have to jump through a lot of linguistic hoops to get there, but it's even if it were, it's fine. But yeah, they're drawing from what would be considered. I mean, you have annals, you have these chronological texts, these historical texts that they draw from, so that they could glean things from them. So it's not. But yes, it's debated who these people are. It's not certain.
It's so interesting looking at this time period. It's interesting to think about. I think about like history now, right? You think about now, since the advent of computers and technology, like we have so much data. Like you think about social media, like what we do, like YouTube. Like I have over 200 videos on my channel. Somebody 200 years from now will be able to look up Skylar Fiction. Hopefully, I'm rich and famous, so I'll be popular enough for them to talk about me, and it'll make my life really awesome. But besides that, right? Let's just like they're going to be able in the future to literally watch this and be like, oh, back 200 years ago, before we were all had our brains implanted in the brain in the vat system that we have.
Which made Side 10 Bruggencade very happy.
Yes. Like they'll think he's like some kind of prophet or something. They're like, our prophet, our leader, Side 10 Bruggencade, had predicted that we would all be brains in a vat, and he was correct. But then you take something like a couple thousand years ago, like we can't. There's very little we can know, right? There's stuff we can look up from, maybe documents people had written. We can look at like architecture. We can look at, but it's just very little we can actually understand about these cultures. And it was just so long ago. All right. We're getting good. I think we're about to get good. 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Sin was full of tar pits. And when the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell in them, okay, and the rest fled to the hills. Then 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food. Then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom.
So just to be clear, this is 4 kings being pictured here, 4 armies fighting against 5 armies. This is not a mild skirmish. This is being portrayed as this is a very strong force that's come all the way across from Mesopotamia to here. I just want to point that out because of what's getting ready to happen in the story.
Well, it's interesting because it really doesn't tell you what they're fighting about either, necessarily. I don't know if it's for power, for possessions, for land.
The people in Sodom and Gomorrah, that they're intimating that they were supposed to be paying tribute. They were vassals of the king of Elam, and then they stopped paying. They rebelled, and so now, in good Mesopotamian fashion, they march across and make them, fight against them, to make them pay tribute, to make them.
It's like, pay me, bitch.
That's
pay
right.
Me my money. That's basically what it breaks down to. Pay me, or we invade with our 5 armies.
Yep.
War never changes, folks. All right. Let's see here. Okay. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot in his possession, since he was living in Sodom. A man who had escaped came and reported this to Abram, the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great tree of Mamre, near the Amorite, a brother of Eshishkul, and all of whom were allied with Abraham. When Abraham heard that this relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men. 318 men. God damn it! Why am I trying to read that like 318 trained men? I just didn't.
It's a particular squad, the 318.
Yeah, I was like, who are these 318 men? Like, what's going on here? I'm wondering why they didn't write that out. Why they actually just wrote the number 308. It's so strange. It doesn't do that anywhere else in this fucking dialogue. All right, trained men born in the household and went to pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abraham divided his men to attack them. He routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobath, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought his relative Lot and his possessions together with the women and other people. We get that women again. And Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him. The king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley. Shaeth, this is the king's valley. Let's see. Then the Melchizedek, king of Salem, bought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hands." Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself." All right. Give it would this be slavery? And is this what's going on? Like, give me your slaves, your servants is basically.
Oh, I can't imagine anything else. It's the norm.
Well, just give me the people. I'll use to keep your stuff. I just need the people. This moral good man, Abram. All right. But Abram said to the king of Sodom with raised hand, "I have sworn an oath to the Lord God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of his sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich.
So just to kind of recap here, we've seen 3 stories now, right? We've seen him going down into Egypt and screwing up down there, but being made more wealthy because God's hand works for him supernaturally. Then he comes back up into the land, and Lot goes down into Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abram stays in the land and is told, look, everywhere this is yours. This is all yours. Now Lot, because of this poor choice that he made, which this is just phase 1 of his poor choice, these kings come over and take him captive. Abram, with 318 people, goes out and defeats 4 armies, right?
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
And now, people have tried to make some, well, he did it at night. But I mean, it's not just that he gets him and gets Lot and gets the hell out of there.
Yeah. And you're talking about hand-to-hand combat. Like, you're not talking, like guns, weapons, where you might have a chance. Like, it's literally hand-to-hand combat.
And if you
4 armies, or 5 armies.
If you think about the number 318, roughly, if you remember from the book of Judges, Gideon has 300 men. And the reason that he only had 300 men is it started off with like 20,000 or something. Then it went down to 10,000. And God keeps paring it down, saying that's too many. Because if you win with 10,000 people, you'll say, we did it. But if you only do it with 300 men, there'll be no question about it. God did it for you. So the idea here, I think, is very clear. This low number of people. And of course, the text says it explicitly, right? And this is what Abram's saying now to the king there of Sodom. Hey, you keep all this stuff. And he says, nope, I'm not keeping any of it. Why? Because then later on, somebody out here, you or a land surrounding Canaan, will be able to say, we made Abraham rich. Therefore, we have a claim to his possessions. We're responsible for it. Nope. God did it. And it's from a literary standpoint, it's like building the justification for why Israel owns the land.
Yeah, I mean, it makes them look like the heroes. It's like, hey, look what you can do with God.
Yep.
Unless, it's pretty incredible. All right. So that makes a lot more sense. And I honestly didn't catch what I was reading that's literally saying that 318 men beat 5 armies.
Yeah, but you got to read all these really hard names. So.
Yeah, it's fucking, Jesus, like someone's going to put a video together, me like just mumbling all these names off. Abram said the king of Sodom with race, I already read that. I will accept nothing but means I will accept nothing what my men have eaten, and the share that belongs to the men who went with me. To Aner, Ishako, and Mariame, let them have their share. All right. Okay. What time is it? Let's do this last chapter. It's getting late. I don't want to go too late. It's been a long day. It was probably finished about 9:30. So, and then we'll start with the covenant. We'll do this. The Lord's covenant with Abram. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your very great reward. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can you give me? What can you give me, since I remain childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, you have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Like how terrible. I'm sorry, your servant, it's fucking been doing all your work, will get some of your money, you fucking dick. Like, oh, my servant's going to get it, even though they're like my fucking slave. All right. Then the word of the Lord came to him. The man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. Abraham believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness.
And of course, this is the verse that's picked up on in the New Testament, talking about what faith is and what it takes to be considered a righteous person.
Okay.
Abraham believes God. And of course, later in a different passage, it's said that Abraham received that position when he offered up Isaac. So when he put that faith into action. So, theologically speaking, it's a debated topic. What does y'all say?
All right. And he also said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you the land to take possession of it. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? Like, God just told you you're going to gain fucking possession of it. So the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Abram brought all three, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite of each other. Oh, so weird. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. Then birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. I like how it adds those little details into the story.
Just Abraham scratched his head.
Like it's like then the birds, they came down and tried to eat them. So, but I'll shoo them away. It's no worries. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and there they will be enslaved and mistreated. But I will punish the nation they serve. I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will continue out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here for the sin of the Amorites, and not yet reached its full measure. Know what that's referring to? When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking fire pot was blazing. Torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On the day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said to your descendants, I give you this land from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river of the Euphrates, the land of Kenites, Kenizzites, Kadamites, Hittites, Perizzites, I don't know what that name is, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Gerishites, Jebusites. Oh my God. All right.
So couple interesting things, and then we can stop. But so this is the process of making a covenant, the ritual of making a covenant, one of them anyway. And it's interesting that God puts Abram to sleep. And this is a critical part of this passage, in my opinion, because God is the one that makes the covenant. And so God himself is responsible to fulfill it. Abram was asleep when it happened, right? So if God is the one responsible for it, this is an unconditional covenant. So it's not something that Abram can lose, I suppose is the point. Because it's a covenant that's made with him while he was asleep. He wasn't, in other words, there's no onus on him. It's something that God is saying, I will do this for you, which is critical from Israel's standpoint, because no matter what, no matter how bad things get, God is the one that's responsible for completing this covenant. He's done it with himself, and so he's going to fulfill it. The other thing is the mention in verse 18, to your descendants I've given this land from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates. I mean, if you think about that, I mean, even if you consider the river of Egypt to be not the Nile, but to be something, north of that, just south of like the Negev or something, the Euphrates River, that's pretty clear. And the Euphrates River is, of course, the river that's over in eastern Syria, right? And in Iraq.
Oh my God.
So did you think about it's, Israel's here. He's saying that
it'll be all the way over here.
I mean,
which doesn't even match up now.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the interesting part, and I'd have to do some research on this, but just kind of taking this off the top of my head here, I suspect that given that this text was probably written during the Babylonian captivity, this is where they are in Mesopotamia, right? They're in between the Tigris and the Euphrates. So, hey, it's even coming over, it's even coming over here. I'd have to look into that, but
No,
that's just
but that makes sense. It makes more sense that they would basically be trying to like basically, hey, you're going to get to own all this one time. What the Babylonians, Mesopotamian is, you'll own that.
Yeah,
God will get you charged that. But apparently that's not how it kind of ended up. You got a small piece of land. It's basically given to you.
But of course, from a dispensationalist viewpoint, Christian, that would be dispensationalist, and I suspect Jill would hold this as well. There's going to come a day in the future when the rapture will happen, and then the tribulation period will come 7 years, and then
they'll be like, it's all here now.
That's right. Jesus is going to come back, and that's when every knee is going to bow and every tongue is going to confess that Jesus is Lord.
You know what I don't get, is why would the fuck would you want to be in the Middle East for paradise? You know what I'm saying? Why don't you go somewhere like New Zealand or somewhere beautiful?
Key West,
Key West, yeah. Live in Key, let paradise be in Key West, not the middle of the fucking desert. Why? It's what's that city? United Emirates, UAE, right? That. Eventually that city is going to die because once the oil situation is done, there's no economy. They're trying to make this huge tourist destination. Right, in the Middle East, which Americans don't, I don't know, I shouldn't say all Americans, but a lot of Americans don't want to fucking go to a Middle Eastern country on their vacation. Yes, there are probably some very beautiful places in the Middle East, right? I'm not knocking Middle Eastern people by any means, but when I think of vacation spots, it's not the middle of a fucking desert with a soulless fucking city built by slaves.
Particularly in the mind of an American citizen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When we think of vacations, we're thinking palm trees and sunshine and
I live in Florida. It's got to at least be equal and tropical to right. Well, and I think too, honestly, somewhere I wouldn't mind visiting would be Egypt. I'd love to see Egypt. Some of the history. That's a culture that's been around a long time. Obviously, you have the pyramids. You have a lot of interesting history there. I think would be nice to see. But Middle East, no, thank you. I don't even want to be fucking close to where all that terrorism and shit happens, man. You couldn't pay me to go into one of those countries. Now, it could be completely safe. You could be fine. Probably nothing will happen. But I'm just not going to take that chance. I look too a white American. I'm gonna be I'm Canadian. I don't know. Anyways, this was fun. It's just getting late. I'm kind of tired. I'm a little worn out. I know Josh is gonna get up early too.
Chill wears you out, man. That's how it is.
It does, man. That was exhausting. And listening to him and not participating was the hardest thing. And I participated a little bit, but very little towards the end of it. But it was a good show. If you guys didn't watch, I did a hangout earlier today with Jesus is Lord.
He's just a sad human being.
Yeah, he's really sad. Got a lot of I think he's a habitual liar too. I think he just constantly lies. He's I'm not a big Trump fan, yet he's literally debated with me for hours about Trump before hangouts about he loves him and stuff like that. But anyways, yeah.
He's the kind of person that he's when I talk about people that learn enough just to be dangerous, he's the kind of person that I'm thinking of, right? Somebody that reads a book written by somebody that holds similar beliefs to him to sort of give possibilities for why it is that, this gospel says it was the 3rd hour and this gospel says it was the 9th hour. It's the different time systems that are being spoken of here. Okay, well, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
It's also possible that it's just a contradictory statement.
Well, today I made some kind of analogy to vaccines. I was like, you support vaccines, right? You vaccinate your kids. He's like, no.
Nope.
I couldn't get in. I didn't have time to get into it. I was like,
I just such a liar.
It's he's so full of it. And the dishonest conversation we had about politics, where he's convinced that, he doesn't know the difference between a party and liberal and conservative. He thinks for some reason the Democrats have always been the liberal party throughout history, and the Republicans have always been conservative, which is, like I said, I respect some conservative values. I don't want people to think that. I know I sound like an ultra liberal person, progressive person. On social issues, I am, but I'm a little bit more fiscally moderate when it comes to those things. I used to vote Republican, And like the dishonesty of this guy, like to just say like, oh, the Democrats are racist. I'm like, dude, you don't know history. You don't know, like,
Please be quiet.
yeah, it's like you don't understand like what it isn't about Democrat, Republicans, it's about conservative and liberal. It's about the ideologies and what you're representing. Like the party is just a name, right? Are there racist Democrats? Yes. Are there racist Republicans? Probably hell yes. At least at this point. You know, I don't, you know, I take less issue with American people who identify as Republican or conservative as I do the politicians. Because I think, honestly, when you talk to people in everyday life about politics, it's all in the way you frame it. Like when you say a question, right? Like to get the instance I always give people with healthcare, right? Like if I were to ask somebody, do you think if somebody got in a car accident and was badly injured and didn't have health insurance, should they be taken care of at the hospital? Most people are going to be like, yeah, that's I want them to live. I don't want them to die, right? But if you frame it like, hey, should the government pay for people's health insurance? They're going to be like, no, don't do that. They should get a job and get health insurance or something. It's like it's the same situation. It's like that's the difficulty of it. It's all on how you frame things. And in my opinion, the Republicans and conservatives have gotten very good at framing things. Democrats are terrible at it. The Democratic politicians are awful at making good arguments for their positions. You know, it took Obama for Democrats to get somebody in there that was articulate, that could, and he was basically, what's funny is people don't even realize he was basically a moderate Republican. Like if you look at like the policies of Barack Obama, maybe not some of the social issues like the gay rights things and things like that, but like he would have been a Republican in 1980 standard of the party. Anyways, this isn't supposed to be about politics, but I get wild up. But I'm bummed. Okay, what else we got? That's it. Check out Josh's channel, link in the description. Please upvote the video, share it. I'm trying to do this more often, but I need help. I need people who haven't seen this channel, know about this channel, to watch it. I find that when people start watching it, they're entertained and they binge watch the videos. So get it out to people, like, share, blah, blah, blah. If you really like my stuff, you could always donate on Patreon, which is cool because I'm actually very soon, I've been telling you guys this, I'm going to do a video showing you guys the stuff I purchased with the Patreon account. So I'm going to show some of the camera equipment that I'm getting because I do have a short film that I'm working on now for the channel based on Abraham. So we're not going to get too much in detail, but I will say it will be a modern day telling of a particular version or a particular story about Abraham in the Bible. But more to come, as we say. I think that's it. Josh, you got anything before we sign off here?
No, man, I'm good. Thanks again for having me on. This is always a lot of fun. Really appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. And anybody, I think we might have had a couple Christians in the audience. Actually, SkylarFictionShow@gmail.com, folks. That's all you got to do, and I will set up a date. Just email me back and remind me if I forget or something because I have a terrible memory. Until next time, please subscribe and make the world a better place.